I thought it might be kind of fun just to have a little fireside chat without the fire. And I don't know, talk about some of the simple things that I'm learning that have been really helpful lately for me. In spiritual life, it seems, at this point, 20 years into it, not a rigorous practice, I'm ashamed to say, or not happy to say, I'm not ashamed to say it, but not happy to say it, but a good steady practice of about 20-something years. I think some of the things that have really turned out to be helpful, some of the things that have happened, that have developed in mind and in practice, that have really given me the feeling of moving forward, let's say, given me the feeling like there's some hope that something can be achieved in this life. And I think one of the things is that steadiness has been incredible in that it has produced in me a sense of love for the divine. That mantra has imbued me with a power for generating a sense or a feeling of love inside, whatever that means to you. For me, it's just that warm, kind of joyful feeling of really wanting or enjoying the company of the thought of the divine. Because of that, and I think that's what took the most amount of time, was having that mantra become something living within me, has something that has its own energy and has its own atmosphere when it enters the mind and produces that feeling. Thakur says, as is a man's feeling of love, so is his meditation. And I think that just comes with time. It's inevitable. If you speak the name of God or repeat the name of God, it is inevitable that you will fall in love with the divine. Just the constant thought of any of the divine incarnations, they live a pure life of love. It's impossible not to love love. And that's the goal of spiritual life, is to love love for its own sake, without motive or anticipation of result for it. So in having that love generated around the mantra, and being able to call the mantra up, I'm using it now. Before I used it just sort of as a repetitious thing that I did during my practice. And in the last year, I've gone Rambo on that, as it were. I use the mantra very strategically, literally almost as a weapon for myself. When those thoughts of me and mine, and what do they look like when you're in certain moods? That's a state of me and mine. When you're very concerned about what you like or don't like, or what you want or don't want, what you're enjoying or not enjoying, those are states of me and mine. And they have to be overcome. And they're usually very complex. Like we said, it takes a string of thinking, one step at a time, to get you to a state of mind or a mood. And I have found that using the mantra to interrupt that process, like becoming aware enough through the practice of sitting and watching the mind, becoming aware enough to see the process and the individual thoughts that lead to your challenge states, the states that are difficult to see the divine from, that if you can recognize those processes, using the mantra to break that cycle is incredibly effective and incredibly powerful. So when you see that first thought or two that usually lines up the rest of them to put you in a particular state of mind or mood or perspective, immediately send in that mantra and replace that process with the feeling of love, with that idea of the divine, with the idea of your highest ideal. And it weakens that sense. We read just, yesterday or the day before, that the name of God is more powerful than the senses. And you can count on that. That's exactly what I'm talking about, is that when you begin that name, you interrupt that process of me and mine. You stop putting in the fodder, the fertilizer for selfish thinking and for selfish states. You interrupt that process. And by interrupting that process, you resist a state of being that isn't yours, that isn't your nature, because your nature is love. Your nature is kindness. It is compassion. It's friendliness and peacefulness. That's what you are. And that's why it bothers you to be in states different from that. And so if you can just interrupt that process of thoughts of me and mine coming in and conjuring a sense of self that's not content, that's not happy, that's needy, or in whatever form they happen for you, if you can interrupt that and put in that mantra and that thought of God and interrupt that space, then your natural space begins to become more noticeable, begins to grow in you, and you get better at using the mantra, at recognizing your thought processes, at seeing these linear progressions that create moods and states of perception that then poison or misinterpret new input. So if you're in a bad mood, somebody comes in real cheery in the morning, good morning, you're like, shut up, I hate you. You know, it causes you to react in a wrong way to the world around you. And so I'm really excited that has started to grow and develop in me, because it's made me feel a lot less helpless in my spiritual life. And it certainly has inspired a great deal of hope inside that there is some way of shutting down this ignorance of selfishness, this ignorance of mind that happens when you let a mind go wild without weeding, without changing it. So I thought I would share that. I hope it's helpful. You know, quite often I know the really elementary things, but I don't think that spiritual life is more than an elementary thing. I don't think you have to know a lot. I think that these very simple practices will keep the dust of ignorance from covering your inner light, your inner strength, the beauty that is you, the wonder that is you, and allow it to shine, allow it to come out unadulterated by wrong thinking. So I'm hoping that that's helpful, really and truly, even though it's so simple. Dedicate yourself to your practice. It's the simple things that eventually bear a beautiful fruit of relationship. And a relationship with God isn't just, you know, the idea of having an imaginary friend somewhere in the world, because that image of the divine, by constant repetition and constant contemplation, grows into something that incorporates everything around you, everything that you experience. And you begin to see and feel like, you know, a walk in this beautiful wood in the afternoon with the breeze, that becomes an experience with the beloved, an experience with the divine. And that intimacy grows, and that relationship flows. There's a lot of laughter, a lot of joking, a lot of, you know, quipping with the divine when you've, you know, spent a lot of time working on something in your life and doing the work. So really, all of these videos, all of these things, again, are about cheerleading, because I went through a lot of years with nothing, and more failures than I can count, daily failures in my spiritual life, in this thing. But be undaunted by your failure. Don't give up. Hang in there, because it's worthwhile. It's worthwhile, however you do it.